If you're watching this on YouTube, you will be somewhat surprised that a guy from Northern England is sitting outside on a sunshiny day, Matt, with barely a cloud in sight. It's so good to see you. It's nice to see you got some good weather. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, it is. Yeah, who knew? Who knew? It's a secret that we do have good weather over here. To be fair, so.
Funny. Well, for the global audience, Matt Baker is joining us on the show. You think of the UK or you think of anywhere in that area, you think of bunkers, because of pot bunkers on links courses. And you were just joking with me before we recorded that you like bunkers today in England were the hottest place in the world because of the reflection.
Oh, it was brutal. My first lesson was an hour's lesson in a bunker. It was a great lesson, but I was sitting there thinking, God, I'm just melting. I was just, it was I can't complain though. That's the main thing. I can't complain.
All right, audio listeners, Matt's sitting outside on his synthetic putting green. It looks like a really cool area there. We're not going to talk about putting though, because you're very much a swing guy. And like me, you like the holistic approach to instruction. So I want to kick this whole thing off here because in golf, there's certain terms, right? The lexicon of golf terms. And one of those is compression. And one of the elements you're going to talk about in your M system is the line of compression. So let's start there. Let's hook people to say, this is how we compress that iron shot properly.
Yeah. So in the M system, so I've been, working with Mike Malaska and so on as one of his coaches. I'm only one of 9 in the UK, in the world, would you believe? So, but one of the things that Mike talks about with us and teaches us to coach is what we call line of compression. It's part 1 of the M system, really. Right. So, and I'll go into the M system in a bit more detail, but one of the things that, like you say, most golfers need to get is this good compression on the ball. And how do we do that? Well, a lot of that comes through from other sports as well. So if you did any other sport, whether it be tennis or baseball, table tennis, hockey, ice hockey, what we tend to look for is we want the right arm, or your trail arm if you're a right-handed golfer, and the back of the hand to be on the back of the racket, the shaft, the bat, whatever it is, as you hit the ball. So this is going to give you more stability. Mm-hmm. So the simplest way to put that is if I was to fall over, for example, which has happened in the past, but if I was to fall over and I was to land with my hands in front of me, they would always be this way, and my joints would tend to line up.
Yes.
My elbow wouldn't be out here because that's a disaster to break your wrist or whatever it is. Everything would line up. So it's the same with a golf ball. So, and any other sport. So if I've got a ball coming this way, let's say with baseball or tennis, or whatever, I need this hand to line up behind the back of the shaft, and I need my arm to line up with it as well. So we see a lot of amateur golfers, coming over the top, this right elbow gets high, or they're trying to tuck this elbow in and get underneath. Well, suddenly I haven't got this stability behind the ball and the ability to compress it.
Yeah.
Because there's no support there behind it. So it comes from something that you already know how to do. So we use a lot of tools like tennis rackets when we're teaching, so that, you say, right, how would you hit this ball? They immediately, without any training, whether they've done tennis or baseball or anything, they immediately get this arm to line up behind the back of the shaft. And as soon as you get that feeling and we work from that from day one, really, even with the putter. Mm-hmm. So we'll train them from day one to have the arm, or the right arm, the trail arm, leading up behind the back of the shaft, and hidden putts just with the one hand.
Yeah.
Just getting used to that feeling of the right arm pushing the club through. So it's that motion there, and that's how you get true compression. So we call that line of compression. If you studied a lot of the top players on TV, you will see the fact that when they come into this impact position, they get their right arm lined up behind the back of the shaft, and that's how they get good compression on the ball. So it's not about shaft lean as such. Yes, that happens, but we find, again, later on in the system, if you try to create that, it ends up becoming a disaster.
Yeah, I want to mind that for a little while too, because you talk about the back of the trail hand on the side of the shaft, and then the elbow and the arm supporting that. I love the image. And a lot of folks, they may get the arm position, but then they also give up the wrist. They flick the wrist underneath there to propel the golf club. So obviously then they're breaking, because it seems to me like there are various elements to this line of compression, and you can have yourself in position, but at the last second, prematurely, that trail risk goes, and then you break down the line as well. Yes.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, obviously, we don't really flick at it too early.
Yeah.
A lot of that happens through the right sequencing, though, as well. So if you using your body correctly as well, that can time that throw up.
Yeah.
So it can be related to a throw, to the fact of, if you time that throw up or release correctly, then you're going to get more distance. We do believe that the hands should be working
Yes.
through the swing. We don't believe in holding the hands off, because we see so many amateurs, yeah,
I'm
trying to
celebrating.
trying to drag the handle through in an attempt to get compression, let's say, or to get forward shaft lean, but then they're giving up so much power.
Yeah.
So that's an element of timing, which is fairly easy to train to a certain degree. But yes, that you're right. We like to see golfers have that slight cup or slight angle in the wrist at impact. We find it happens through other areas. We don't try to hold. We don't want golfers to drag the handle. That's what we don't want.
All right, cool. You before we introduce you, I want to go a little further too, because in our messaging back and forth, you talked about how you like to find the connections between various sports. And right here at the top, you talked about line of compression, and you picked up a tennis racket next door to you here, and you showed, and I'm like, yeah, it's a really cool way to take whatever the aspirant golfer's other discipline is, sometimes the better discipline, and use that to say, look, there is a similarity between a baseball swing and a golf swing, and a tennis swing and a golf swing. And in my career in teaching, which has been spanned many years since 1995, people sort of come to me, and I'm sure you see the same thing. Maybe they've played cricket, and they're like, well, my cricket swing is going to mess up my golf swing. But it couldn't be farther from the truth, really, huh?
No. I mean, gosh, one of the first questions we always ask anybody that comes for a lesson is, do you do any other sport?
Yeah.
Because that immediately tells us whether they've got good hand-eye coordination, or it immediately gives me something to pull on as a thread to say, look, okay, all right, so you've done baseball. Fantastic. Well, did you know this is the similarity to this? And if you can start speaking, now, obviously, I'm an Englishman, okay, and I've had to learn a little bit about baseball. The closest we have to baseball is called rounders over here, which is with a dinty little bat.
Yeah.
But it's the same principles, if that makes sense. And it's amazing how we get good success with clients, and by just saying, okay, well, hold this tennis racket for me, and now make this stroke, make a forehand stroke, for example, and they immediately do it, and it's exactly the same motion that we want them to do in the swing, and yet without any thought, because they're holding a totally different object, and yet as soon as they have a golf club in their hand, their brain just goes, and they suddenly think, well, I've got to do this, haven't I? And I'm like, no, you don't have to. It's this movement here. So yes, one of the big things that I've learned, I can't take credit for that. I mean, it's basically Mike's things, Mike Malaska Golf's, with regards to, we talk a lot about using other sports. So sports connection, as we call it, is huge, because whether it's talking about face control, or whether it's talking about the shaft, getting the shaft to work, we do this move called up to under. If you give somebody a baseball bat to do that, or you give them a tennis racket, they'll do up to under. Whereas most amateur golfers, they tend to come under to over, to go over the top. Well, if we say to you, right, give them a racket and go up to under, they can do it. So yeah, you're right. There's the connection there is, and suddenly as soon as you do it, suddenly they're like, this light bulb goes on. You can see it in their faces, and it's a beautiful thing, because you made that connection to something that they already know how to do.
I personally blame a couple things for the overthought in golf. Some of it is over exuberant golf instructors who are like vomiting information on some poor learner. And then also the fact that the ball's on the ground. And so they like swing back and they're like, oh gosh, I got to go down. One more thing here, and I want your commentary. I found that tennis players who can hit a topspin forehand can hit the draw shot in the blink of an eye. And then in the United States, we call it 10-pin bowling. In South Africa, the rest of the world, there's lawn bowling, and if you can bowl a ball or a bowling ball, and you start it for the right hander out to the right and curve it back to left, that motion of delivering the ball is very similar to a draw shot as well, to your connections point.
100%. So you're dead right. So the action of obviously face control is first thing at all, which we do in the M system. So most golf pros, for example, will not teach to use these things. Okay, so they'll say to you, the first thing they'll say is, take the hands out of it. Don't use them. Okay, they've got to be quiet and calm through the shot. Use your body more. Well, yes, the body's important, and yes, we don't want to have overaction. But at the same time, if I had a tennis racket and I said to a player, put it over to the right-hand side of the court for me, they'd do it instantly. Their hands would do whatever they had to do to put it over that way. Go to the left-hand side of the court. Yes, they'll put it that way. And like you say, topspin forehand it without any thought in the world. And they don't even play tennis, if that makes sense. As soon as we give them a golf club, they don't do that. They've lost all sense of face control. The good players, and you'll know this, you mix with the good players, they have such good facial awareness of where that club face is in time and space during the swing that they understand that, they use that natural ability. So you're right. So you have a tennis player, they can make the right movements in the stroke, and they understand it because you relate it to their sport. But that motion of, I'll try and stand this way, but that motion of the racket going up to under is how do you do a tennis racket. So I play a forehand in tennis, I'm going to play one back there, my racket would go up and then it comes under. It's the same with baseball. The bat starts up, it comes under. So they can immediately get the club moving on the right path, whereas most amateur golfers, it's going under, over, this way. So and you would never play a top spin forehand, as you said, from going from under to over. It just wouldn't work, would it? So that connection, as you rightfully say, as soon as I give them a tennis racket, they think I'm nuts, because I go out there with my bag with tennis racket in, baseball bat, hockey sticks, and so on, and I hand them this, and I say, right, now play me a top spin foot, and we're hitting range balls up the up the fairway, and they can do it, and you're like, well, you can do it physically. We've just got to now transfer that mentally into your game.
There's a beauty in the simplicity of it all. And I can only imagine everyone watching you or with an earshot are like, oh, yes, and they're fiddling around with it. So while all of our fans are now experimenting with their topspin / golf forehand, I want you to tell the viewers and the audience around the world a little bit about Matt Baker. Give us the bio, please.
Gosh, well, how long you got? So, yeah,
version.
Well, I was born in, so yeah, I've been a golf professional. I've been in golf since I was 14 years old. So I was a bit of a late bloomer. I got it as a birthday present from my mum and dad. I didn't really want to do it, if I was honest, at the time. But I did it. But I had that first shot and I absolutely loved it. And I never looked back from there. So I've been in golf since I ended up working in my first pro shop at 16. So I'm 50 now. So I've been working ever since then in golf, if that makes sense. I did take a sabbatical for a while. That's a lie. While my son was growing up, I wanted to be at home a bit with him. Yeah. So I did take a little bit of time off, but I never stopped learning golf because it's in my blood, if that makes sense. I love it. So I've been a head professional. I've been a coach as a head coach at clubs. And now I'm in a very comfortable position where I work 3 days a week at a local golf club near us, near Manchester, the Manchester Golf Club. It's a beautiful complex. And Brian there has been wonderful in saying, yeah, Matt, you can come and coach and do your thing over here. So that's been great. And I've had a wonderful journey along the way. And obviously meeting up with Mike as well was just a dream come true for me, because I was in the doldrums with my game at that time. As a pro, you're always trying to look, and as a coach as well, this, you don't often have time to care for yourself, do you? So, and I was trying to grab things and going down all these cliches, as you were saying, and making it so complicated, and thinking, gosh, I need to learn radial and auto deviation and this and this, and I didn't really. I just needed to go back to connections, because I did tennis at school. Okay. That was my sport, and I stumbled across Mike's YouTube channel, and he was doing a Sports Connect with tennis, and it just something in my head just went, that's what I need to do. So I studied it for a while. And this is 10 years or so ago. And then I joined his website and so on. And then I started asking him questions and getting more probably annoying as I went along. And basically he reached out and said, Matt, you know your stuff, can we have a chat? So we did. And that's how it came on. But it's been a wonderful thing to be able to have a lot of good mixture in my life with some great coaches. Because I think as a coach, we should always be learning, shouldn't we?
True.
But yeah, it's been a wonderful. I've loved it really. Golf is my blood, really.
Yeah, you and me both. And folks, Matt does give online golf lessons as well, but more about that. Okay, let's get back to your M system. So we've addressed they're 5 points basically. It's a system to just basically making better, more efficient, more productive golf swings.
Yeah. So sorry.
No, I was talking about, so we've touched on the line of compression, unless you want to build a little further there. Then the next point of the 5 is the lever system. Now, I'll tee you off by making a personal observation. You've illustrated the fact that I get to see the best of the very best playing their best on weekends when I'm working for CBS. And I've worked with some elite golfers. And when I come back and I give lessons to clubs golfers, they're like, how does Rory hit it so far? Or how does Justin Thomas hit it so far? Or one other slightly built person that creates this massive speed at the right time. And then I launch into a diatribe about levers. So I want you to give us your thoughts on the lever system and how people who want to create or basically work less for more, how they can lever up a little bit and make their golf swing more efficient.
Yeah, so you're dead right. So in our world, yes, there's other ways to play. There certainly is. But in our world, the lever system is probably one of the most important factors that every golfer, 95% of golfers should learn, because they don't use it.
Yeah.
So the amount of times that the way the hands work is that they hinge in the backswing, they unhinge in the downswing, and then they rehinge in the forward swing. Now, most people cannot rehinge in the forward swing. Yeah. They'll hold it off, or they'll chicken wing it, or whatever it will be, because they've not got used to this lever system. Now, Mike does this really great job. He had a great story, and I'm sure he won't mind me telling you this. So I'll stand up for this one.
All
so.
Right.
He has this great story. So I was all comfortable there on a chair. Okay. So Mike has this great story. When he was a young kid, he got a chance to go to a clinic with Arnold Palmer and Jack Nicklaus. Okay, so he ran there. He said, "Yeah, I know these guys. I'll go and watch them." And when he went to them in this clinic, they were talking away, and he noticed that Jack was stood there. Can you see me? Okay.
Yeah, we can see you great. And for the audio listeners, go check this on YouTube, because Matt is about to demonstrate a little bit, and I'll do my best to
yeah, I'll try and explain it.
Put on your radio description.
So he watched them there, and they were chatting away to the audience, let's say, and he noticed that Jag had his legs crossed in front of him, and he had a golf club in his left hand only. His right hand was in his pocket, and he was just swinging the club back and forth, just doing this. Okay, and this is what and it was he noticed that the club was hinging on the way back. It was striking the ground and rehinging on the way through. Now Arnold Palmer was stood the other way, chatting away, and he had his right hand, and he was doing this motion. Okay, and there was no tension in it. The hands were barely on the club, so I'm literally holding the club with my thumb and my forefinger, and I'm allowing the weight of the club, or the momentum of the club, to swing down and through for me. So, and you'll often see the guys and the girls on the tee when they're waiting for the green to clear or whatever it is. You'll often see them there, just stood there, just doing this because they're bored. But this actual motion is a motion that most golfers need to learn to do, because if you can do this, you literally have a golf swing. Because if I can do this, if I start with this one and hinging back and forth, my wrist is hinging in the backswing, it unhinges and rehinges in the forward swing. If I do that, and then I add in both hands, and then I start adding in body, suddenly I've got a golf swing. So, and it's not that complicated, is it? So that motion of just allowing the club to just hinge back and forth, it keeps the club on plane, it's in balance, and I'm able to make a golf swing. Then I can suddenly add in both hands and then add in my body. Suddenly, I've got a golf swing. And that motion, this hinging, unhinging, and rehinging, is what creates, it can be up, I think it's been studied, it's around 80% of your power comes from those wrist hinges. Now, then you'll watch YouTube or you'll watch an Instagram video and they say, oh, take the hands out of it.
Yeah.
So suddenly we're seeing golfers suddenly doing this sort of motion where they're stiff in the shoulders and there's no wrist hinge at all, trying to create the same power, okay, as they would do in for the golf swing, to try and create the same power with most effort.
Yeah, exactly.
Yet, if I had a baseball bat, okay, and I was to swing a baseball bat, I would not stand there with a baseball bat and do this to hit it, okay, with no arms or no wrists. I'd stand there, it would go up, and then I would flick through, and I would allow the bat to pass my hands, okay. When that time's up, though, is a matter of timing, isn't it? You hit the ball and then it releases.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, so the levers, learning that skill first is brutally important for most of my golfers. It's amazing how, if we stand there, so another drill that we do is we have customers. we when we do a clinic, we do this great thing of we get a chair and we get a driver and we'll peg one up and we'll actually sit on the chair and we'll hit the driver and we'll hit it off down the fairway, and it will go over 200 yards, and everybody's like, whoa, how did you do that? I can't even hit the ball that far. And Mike will often say to them, well, you better learn what I know fast. Okay.
Well, no
so
kidding.
this motion is vital. And when you say you watch the tour players, you can see that action in their hands. And they're good with their hands. And that's the key thing. They know how to use them.
Well, getting back to Rory, if you look at him, let's take contact, the line of compression, right?
Yes.
And 3/4 away in the follow through, he's gone from, if we talk in the lead wrist, basically dead straight, to completely hinged before he's even gotten to his follow through. The speed of that rehinge is massive. And ever since I was Moby Dick, when Moby Dick was a minnow, it's been ages now, I've always said to people, imagine thumbs up for a good shot. Thumbs up is good. So thumbs up in your backswing, thumbs up in your through swing. And then they're like, but that's handsy. And then I add, and I think you're going to get to that next, point 3, the body motion that supports this lever. But the body isn't overpowering it. The body is just providing moving support for this lever. Is that your approach?
Oh God, yes. Are you sure you're not been reading up on it? Yeah, that's
no. Let me start. Here's the thing. I'm a golf nerd. I'm scouring the internet all the time, and I'm bringing all manner of information to people. I'll talk to the folks that talk about, wrist extension, then bow through contact, like a Morikawa or whatever. And then I'll talk to the other folks that are more slingers of the golf club. And in all my years, I'm 54. I'm finding more and more injury happening because people are tilting and turning and stuff to compensate for a very closed club face. Where
it's funny,
where the slingers of the club, the Nicklaus, like you talk about Nicklaus and Palmer, Jim Flick was a legendary golf instructor. He hit balls off his knees with a driver, same as what you guys do. And his influence, you can see it throughout. And I feel like more golfers will be better served if they learn what you're teaching than the other way around.
100%. I totally agree. And thank you for that, because you're dead right. And obviously Mike has a massive connection to Mr. Jim Flick. So, and if you study his work, you're right. And if more golfers was to learn this motion, then they would, they'd find golf so easy. That's the key.
I want to say this to you, and I'm going to throw out some names, and this is kind of proving Matt's point, and I'm coming alongside him in this. I want to mention some names, and you will think of regal, elegant golf swings who hit the ball a long ways. Louis Westhuizen.
Oh, yeah.
Ernie Els.
Yep.
Steve Elkington. Luke Donald. Of course, Rory. He's just faster, but he's a modern day version of all that stuff. They are all, as Jack said, more slingers of the club than pullers of the golf club.
Yeah.
Because of the hinge, unhinge, rehinge thing. But let's get to the body action that supports that, because look, I could stand there with my feet together and clip balls away and have them go pretty well. But then as I get perhaps a little too overactive with my right hand, if I'm a right-handed golfer, I'll hit some lefts. So talk to us about how the two elements, body and the lever system, work together.
Yeah, so the role of the body is important. Don't get us wrong. So when we start with people, and when I start with beginners, for example, we, like you say, we'll just have them literally go in. We call it L to L. So
Yeah.
they'll swing to an L shape here and an L shape on the forward swing.
L is for long and luscious and lengthy the golf shots. Yeah.
I'm going to steal that.
Right.
Yeah. So, but basically, we start with that, but then the body has a role. Now, the way we see the body, how it works, is it works as a stabilizer.
Okay.
Now, the beautiful way I've tried to describe this as best as I can. Well, we've all seen the tennis ball on a piece of string or a weight on a piece of the string being swung around a hand.
Uh-huh.
Now, when you swing that object around your hand, okay, and you're rotating your wrist in this action, okay, in an anti-clockwise action, that ball or whatever it is that's going around you maintains an orbit.
Yes.
Okay. Now, I'm having to, though, at some point, okay, now that's maintaining its orbit mostly through its momentum, okay, the pressure of it getting pushed out, it's creating that. Now, in order to create that circle, my body, which is my arm and my wrist, is having to stay stable.
Yes.
Now, I'm having to also, though, direct that momentum around my body. If I have an object, I'm spinning it around and I just let go, that object would go straight out.
Exactly
It's
right.
a straight line force.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm rotating this, I'm having to offset that momentum. So as the ball comes around, say it's coming around in front of me here, I'm having to pull my wrist back, let's say, towards me to offset that momentum. Now, the faster and the more I can time that up, the faster that object goes around me.
Exactly right.
Okay. So if I was in the Olympic Games, okay, and I was hammer throw, so you're throwing that hammer around your body, okay, and you watch a hammer thrower, again, relating back to sports.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If I'm throwing that hammer around me, my body would work in an opposing force. So as I swing that weight around me or the hammer comes around me, my body would push backwards. And that's because it's directing momentum and it's also influencing speed. So the body has a role of pushing away from that momentum. So as I'm swinging the golf club around me, I'm always permanently pushing away from it. There is a point at the transition stage where we move in the same time, but as I'm
Very
coming down
short.
to
It's very short.
very short,
Mm-hmm.
but as I'm coming down to hit the ball, my body is pushing away from that momentum. It's not moving up into it. So the most common fault we see with golfers is early extension, let's say, or moving up into the ball.
Yeah.
And that's mostly because they're going with the momentum of the club. If I push my hips back and I push myself away from that ball, I create more club head speed effortlessly. That's the key. And I direct the momentum around me.
Okay, audio listeners there, if you're watching on YouTube, I just raised my hands in a triumphant praise to heaven because of the stuff I'm hearing. Because you've talked about early extension. The internet is awash with people saying, keep your hips back. And they basically, what they're doing is they eliminating athletic movement in order to band-aid a problem where the body's straightening up too early. Where you just understand, to your point, that you're going to move in the opposite direction of where the force of the club's wanting to go.
Yeah.
And then to all of that as well. And now you got the cadre of folks. And look, I do when I teach it, I teach people how to use the ground well, but your ground reaction forces. Now I see people are bouncing around the place, but the reality is to really accelerate that club into the follow through, you push back and away from it, which is the ground reaction stuff, as opposed to going in the same direction as the golf club.
100%. The amount of people that I see jump upwards because they know they've got to use vertical force.
Mm-hmm.
So, but they forget about pushing away. So my body works pushing away in the same direction as the club's going. So the centripetal forces, I'm moving away my body goes this way at the same angle as my club head is. So I don't go up. There is a slight up, but there's a slight diagonal because I'm moving in the opposite direction to the way the club is moving around me. So, and that creates speed.
Yes. And then all you folks, you good golfers that have gone to your professional who said to you, you need to swing left. Now you're pulling on the handle for your dear life and the club head's still going to the right, but you're pulling with your hands. If you get this body action that Matt's describing, that club has got no option but to release to the left instead of being pulled to the left-hand side.
100% right. And also, again, you mentioned right at the top of the beginning of the show was regards to terminology.
Yeah.
So a lot of golfers get terminology wrong as well. We as coaches, there's no set glossary in the back of any PGA manual that says, right, this is a glossary of terminology. This is what you should use it for. And this is it. Everybody has their own interpretation. So how the hips work. Okay. Now, Mike had a great relationship with, you have to excuse my name. I think it's Pete Egoscu.
Okay.
Now, Pete is a physio guy, and he's created this thing called the Egoscu method. Okay. And he helped Jack Nicklaus through his injury problems back in the 80s, I think it was. Anyway, that's where Mike got introduced a lot to the physical side of it and so on, and how the body actually functions. So how the hips actually function, they don't turn as such. Okay. Now the hips work in what we call straight line forces. So they work forward and backwards. If I was to walk, my hips don't turn. I mean, somebody might have a swagger, I don't know, but the hips and the function of the hips work in straight lines. So most golfers would actually function better if they thought of the right hip going back, move up to the left side, and then the left hip goes back, rather than actually thinking of right turn. Because if I think turn, I need to turn around a pivot point. So the example would be, so I'll stand again. So if I stand here and I'm side on, you're looking down the target at me, I need a pivot point to turn around if I need to turn. So my right hip will stay still and my left hip will turn round that point.
Yes.
I would never, ever, Tiger talked about activate the glutes. Activating the glutes is pushing that hip back rather than keeping it still. We were taught, weren't we, for years, keep that right knee still, right hip to turn around that base. Well, this causes a lot of golfers for their hip to then go forward, okay, on the backswing. They never recover. They move up to the left side, and then the right hip goes forward to go round the left hip. So they then get their pelvis, or the center of the pelvis then gets closer to the ball. And hello, we've got early extension. Whereas if I push my right hip back, stays back, and I push my left hip to go back to that, to meet it. So if my left hip goes back to meet my right hip, suddenly I haven't got early extension and I'm pushing away from the ball. So the terminology sometimes of the hips is crucial, because I've done videos before and I get crucified for it. Of course you turn your hips. Of course yes, it looks like it, and so on. But technically the hips work in straight lines.
Yes, and here's my mea culpa, and I'll use that as a segue to the next point. To your very point about, back in the day, because I'm 54, and as a golf instructor, I've been teaching since 95. So I've been the Sony Handycam era. I've seen it all. I've seen it all.
Big BBC. We used to call them big BBC cameras. You used to hold this thing on your shoulder and take video of people. Yeah.
Through it all, I was saved by a few books. Golf My Way by Jack Nicklaus.
Yeah.
The book by Percy Boomer, and then Swing the Clubhead by Ernest Jones. Those have been sort of my Bibles. And then John Jacobs' Practical Golf. Okay. And I remember when I was playing, I played at a high level, that there was that movement where you had to keep your trail knee flexed and then you turn around that, right?
Yes.
I would do that and I was decent, but every video I'd see myself, I would look so jammed up into impact, and I'd just suck the handle of the club into me to play okay. But I was good for at least one shanker tournament, okay? Then I remember, then I got a bit more money and I bought all these golf books, and I bought various books by Sam Snead. And there was a picture of him at the top of his swing in black and white like this, deep right side turn, hands real high, and you could fly a plane between his legs. His right leg was so straight. And I was thinking, this guy was known as the preeminent ball striker of his day. So I asked Gary Player, I'm like, tell me about Snead. Oh, nobody hit the ball like him. So I was like, why on earth then is that guy right up way behind him, legs straight, and here's me trying to keep my right knee bent, and I'm trying to turn against that stuff. No wonder I had the thing short and crooked when I was off. Huh?
Exactly right. 100%. I mean, since learning the how to use the levers, and also how to use the body and function it properly, my distance has gone up. From all those years, I'm a 90s, late 80s, 90s golfer, and I learned through the Faldo era and so on, which was great. But it was all about keep it tight, keep it coiled and so on, which at that time it worked and it was good and you could play that way. But boy, I wished I hadn't have done that. I wish I'd have been more like Greg Norman, with more let it open and
Yeah.
let it go and so on, and John Daly and so on. So yeah, I think I wish now it's like Mike says, learn the M system and get 10 years of your life back, with the golf, and 10 yards as well. So it's a key of learning to move the body, as you say, more functionally and athletically.
Yeah.
That's the key.
Okay, M system, 5 points. We've done line of compression, 1. That's basically a hand action. Then we've done the lever system, which is the wrist and elbow system. Then we've talked about the body motion. So you see, we're going from club head into body. So point 4 in the M system, you say, is combine the skills. So I'm assuming this is just timing up the hands, arms, club head, body.
So the whole point of the system is it's a skilled based system. So it's not about positions, and it's not about learning, top of the backswing. We hate that word in Malaska golf, top of the backswing. Right. It's about creating. You've got to learn skills, okay? And so learning face control is a skill. Learning to hit the ball left and right. My beginners, I'll actually have them hitting the ball left and right on purpose. The skill of a tournament player with a beginner, and they can do it easy, okay? Because we teach them the skill. So it's a skill-based learning system. It's a tiered system. So it starts off pretty simple, and it builds and builds and builds, like you say, and it works from the club head back into the body, whereas most golfers are taught to work from the body.
Exactly.
Yeah. And we haven't even really touched upon posture, alignment, things like that, which is where we start to do it with combined skills. Okay. So we then start to talk about posture and body alignment. I could do a whole show for you about parallax and all this business. But we then start to go into that system. So then you start to have good posture. Posture is important, as you know.
Ball position is massively important.
Huge, yeah. So we go into all that area. But then with that, we got to, like you say, we then got to put the two pieces together, the lever system and then the body motion. Yeah. Now, there is only one position that we tend to focus on in combined skills, which is the most important position in our mind, impact. Okay. So we then start you at impact. Now, you could take a lot of golfers out there and say to them, right, put yourself in a good impact position. What does that look like? And most of them will be,
yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. I know my backswing needs to be up here somewhere and so on. And here on the follow through, and I need to not chicken wing it and so on. No. Put yourself into impact. What does that look like? That's the only bit that matters. So training impact first of all, and then we work back from there. So then we start you to just hit a few little chip shots just with your, from an impact position. We're not worried about anything else. And then we start to gradually open the shoulders up. And then we start to gradually get longer and longer and longer. And we start to stretch the swing out, if that makes sense.
It does. So, it does. And I quickly want to interject there too. It grinds my gears when I see club golfers go to the range and if I'm lucky, they'll hit a 7-iron or 2 before they go to the driver. Then I go to PGA Tour events. I watched a guy in warm-ups last week in New Orleans hit basically wedges that went 60, 70 yards, Rasmus Højgaard, if you're wondering who it is. And this guy busted for about 45 minutes. Just little swings back and forth, kind of almost allowing the swing to grow from 0 to maximum velocity and not just to maximum from the word go.
Yeah. So Mike tells me a wonderful story about he used to coach in Japan. And while he was there, he had this gentleman that he was coaching, right beginner, never played really much before. And he was a Tai Chi expert, this guy. And they went through an experiment of doing everything slowly. So it was basically, do it gradually, do it slowly. And he learned the golf swing. They talked about doing this, and they gradually did it slowly, and even hitting balls at that sort of speed. Gosh, I'm talking about 10% of the speed here. And then they started to grow up to, let's do 20%, let's do 30%, and so on. And then they got eventually to 4. Now, if they stumbled at say 50%, then they went back down to 40%. And he actually became, I think it was within a couple of months, an efficient striker of the ball and was playing off like an 8 handicap or something like that, just from learning the strokes slowly. And you're dead right. So learning, if you can't do it with a pitching wedge, the motion that you're supposed to be doing at 50% speed, there is no chance in heaven and earth that you're going to be able to hit your driver at full speed and try to perform the same movement. So I had a lesson on Sunday it was, and this guy was hooking the ball terrible, pitching wedge, and we're talking 50, 60 yards hooks. But we got him onto a wedge and we did a few adjustments. Within 2 shots, we changed him and he was hitting it straighter. But we had him do it slowly, if that makes sense. And you're right. So so we digress there a bit, but that basically is, doing things slowly. And it's like we say, this is why we will start with the putter with some of our like juniors and lady golfers and beginners. Sometimes we start with a putter because it's a smaller stroke and they're going to have more success, as opposed to saying, like, here's a driver, off you go. Now go and hit that. They've got no chance.
No. Here's how it goes. Here's the driver. Hold it like this. Stand like that. Be parallel to the target. Now swing and finish in balance. How many lessons have you seen people get like that?
So we do a thing which goes into the next segment of how we practice, and we actually like to call it how you calibrate the swing. So there's certain things or certain exercises that you'll see in the M system, for example, where you might have to do that and calibrate it and do that probably every practice session that you go out and do, probably for the rest of your life. So one of my favorite ones is I'll hit shots with just my right hand only, just with a wedge, and just chipping the ball with my right hand, because it trains how my right hand should work. Okay. I spent many years of being a golfer that we were taught to open the face in the backswing, hold the angle, then turn the hands over. So I spent most of my career playing this way. Well, ideally, I'd rather play this way, or what we call a throw release. So I want my right hand. So I practice with my right hand. I mean, you would have done this when we were younger and we'd hit balls, and back then we had to go and pick our own balls up. We didn't have ranges and so on. We'd have to go and we'd have a shag bag that we'd take out to the middle, and we'd be chipping the ball back with our right hand only, and then left, and so on. But those little skills, just that chipping motion here, trains everything you need to know about how to swing a golf club. Because when you're swinging it one-handed, you're not being influenced by the other hand. So this hand will function naturally, instinctively. You would never, ever chip with one hand. Again, I'll stand up. But you would never, ever chip with one hand with your right hand right underneath like this, as we see golfers. And try to chip the ball. You just wouldn't do it. You couldn't do it. Whereas if I had my hand on the back of the shaft, as we said earlier, and I just worked my hand in this sort of hinging, this throw motion, as we call it, as if I was throwing the ball. My club face stays stable, my ball goes straighter, and I get a better contact on the ball. So I stand here just practicing, just chipping balls. And you go to the range, or I'll go to a private, a golf range, incognito or whatever, and people will walk up down the lane and think, look at this guy, look at him. Who does he think he is? But I'm just standing here calibrating my swing, because that's really, really important. So learning those skills is what we're basically working on. That's my skill.
You know what? And that is so true. And I will put an exclamation point on your observation with a real life example. Okay, we could argue that the two greatest golfers of all time are Jack Nicklaus and Tiger Woods. Depends on who you talk to. So let's call Tiger the greatest of this generation. To this day, when he walks on the putting green, every day I see him. He puts two tees out on the green there, just outside of the toe and the heel of his putter. And he stands there for a good 10, 15 minutes, right hand only, back and through, only with the right hand, just to train how the right hand works and to hit the ball in the center of the club face. This is the preeminent golfer, if not of all time, certainly of our generation, doing that. Yet, most club golfers are averse to practicing that way. They throw a bucket of balls down, they hit and hope a few 7-irons or drivers or whatever, and then they think they've practiced.
Yeah, I think so. Again, that sort of segues into the fifth tier, which is how to practice. So when they go and practice, A, they don't have a plan, and B, they sometimes actually look for permission. So they'll look at me and I'll say, I want you to go and practice just with one-handed chips. Can I do that? Of course you can. I've told you can. Yes, go and do it. And then they'll say, can I do that on the yes, only do it on the shots you want to hit well. And then, do you know what I mean? And they're, okay, I'll do it. And can I do it with the driver? Yes, you can. Sometimes they're looking for permission, and because they think they have to do things in a certain way. They think they're going to get judged, maybe, I don't know. But no, you have to sometimes work correctly and efficiently. And you have to, when you practice, you've got to go and practice and get what we call immediate feedback.
Yeah.
So there's no point you standing there with, 100 balls and just whacking them everywhere and had no feedback on whether you was doing what you should be doing correctly or not. So you're right. Most people go there with no plan or no idea really what they just go. I mean, they're having a good warm-up session, really, aren't they? They're not really practicing with a purpose.
Love it.
And I found that a lot. So when we teach or when we go out, we encourage people. We build them what we call a practice station using alignment sticks. I mean, alignment sticks, where were they all our lives? I mean, we need those now. I'll put one out in front and between the ball and the target, and that's their mission is to miss that, to go around it one way or the other, or do you know what I mean? And we put alignment sticks down. It does everything for them. So you never see them do that.
Yeah, you direct attention mentally and physically. This has been fantastic stuff. I know you give golf lessons at your home club, obviously, but you are available online too. So as we put a bow on this conversation, tell folks where they can find you, what the social media handles and such are, because I'm certain folks are like, we're looking for this guy now.
Yeah, so I've been coaching for a while now on Skillist. Yeah. I'm available on Skillist. I'm also available on Golf Live, which is great fun. That's really good fun. So you can find me on those. You just search in Matt Baker and my ugly face will appear. I also, as I've just recently started at a wonderful golf club. I have to give them a big shout out because they're such a good golf club. It's one of the best courses in the north of England. It's got great facilities, which is the Manchester Golf Club. So if you just search the Manchester Golf Club, you'll find us there. I'm really enjoying that. And the whole idea with that there for me is to do schools. I want to do schools and clinics there. And also they call me the international department for Malaska Golf because basically I cover from Florida. Well, I'm the only one east of Florida, basically. So I can go anywhere.
Rest of the world.
So I'm sure that will improve things. But yeah, so we will be hosting golf schools at some point. So watch this space. But you can also find me on Malaska Golf. Just type in www.malaskagolf.com. And I'll be on there with the other guys and Mike, obviously. I do videos for him on there, and we answer. The great thing with that is what I love about that is, and you'll know this as well with your listeners and your viewers, is they have great minds and they'll ask great questions. And we have a segment in there called Ask Mike. They might change that now to Ask Us. I don't know. But basically, we get a chance to answer their questions about things, So, does my right hand do this, and so on and so on. We can do a video back tailored to them, which goes onto the site because that, what it's like when you're sitting in a room with somebody and they say, "Is there any questions?" and nobody says a word, do they? But then there's always somebody who says, "Oh yeah," and they send you a message out, and then somebody says, "Oh yeah, I was going to ask that question." So it's a great platform for that. And obviously I'm on Instagram, just Matt Baker Golf. I'm pretty much on everything. I think Instagram, TikTok,
Instagram was where I found you, Matt, and I'm thankful I did. I'm a big one on helping people, not just to knowledge, but to being wise and then to understanding stuff. And you've brought a healthy heaping of understanding today. So I really appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. I absolutely love it. Get to meet a legend like yourself as well. I've seen you on TV and so on, and great stuff. And you get to see these great players in action, and and to learn and watch what they do is phenomenal, isn't it? I imagine.
Keep shining. You're doing great work.
I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.